Hello and welcome to our AFC East week on our Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Cameron and this is Lucas.
In person.
And for the first time, we're very excited, but we're also very saddened because we are missing one of our fellas. Mr. Tyler Plath is living it up in Arizona right now.
Enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, going to Diamondback games. So he's living it up, but we miss him dearly this week.
Gives us more to talk about, though. You don't have to listen to Tyler talk so much.
Exactly. He's not on and on and on. So we're going to start this episode talking about the Patriots. Wow, I almost said the Patriots. Patriots and Jets. We figure they're going to probably go 4-2 in this. Is kind of where we got them in this division. So we'll start with the worst and we'll move up from there. We'll start with the Jets. Lucas, we're just going to jump right into it.
To do it.
Is Zach Wilson usable at all this year?
No. No. I have my QB 32. He's too raw. He's not really walking into the best situation either. There's no reason to draft him. I understand the excitement. I never thought he should have gone number 2 overall. But no, he's not usable. Don't draft him in your leagues. I feel like it's like another Jared Goff situation, right? Like it's a guy who probably does have a little bit of upside just based on his potential talent, but no, not a guy you shouldn't even be your backup quarterback if you draft 2 QBs. Let him be a waiver wire pickup if you even want him at all, if he even becomes relevant.
Now, here's the real question about Zach Wilson. Is he the best looking quarterback in the NFL right now?
He's the youngest looking quarterback in the NFL right now. I'll tell you that. Oh, I did not get enough of his of Twitter on his draft night. That was great. That was awesome. Yeah, definitely the youngest. I won't say the best looking, but definitely the youngest.
Looks like he just graduated high school.
He really does. He really does. I love it.
Awesome. So we'll move on to our favorite player for all the fellas on the Jets, which is Michael Carter, who we believe is going to lead this running back unit of him, Tevin Coleman, and LaMichael Perrine. So, Lucas, why do we like Michael Carter so much?
I mean, I think you listed it. He walks into a backfield with little to no competition, competitive competition, that is. Tevin Coleman has never been like a bona fide starter in the NFL. He's always been behind Devonta Freeman or, playing like second or third string running back in San Francisco. Michael Perrine, like you mentioned, he was behind Frank Gore all of last season. What does that tell you? Exactly. Father Time himself hasn't caught up to Frank Gore, and Frank Gore is outplaying him. So not much competition there. He's the most talented running back on that team.
Yeah.
Even though he was the second most talented running back on his own team from college, right?
Yes.
So he's walking into a really good situation for him to start at running back. I mean, it's a young and exciting new offense. I can't say that it's going to be a dynamic offense because I don't know what Zach Wilson is going to look like, and Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder aren't the best two. You could ask for a better core wide receiver, but I mean, I have Michael Carter at running back 26. That's how high I think of him. His ADP is running back 39 right now in leagues, which is just silly. You're taking guys like Ronald Jones. You're taking guys, Damian Harris. I'm thinking of other guys who are down in like that early 30s range, and I'd much rather have Michael Carter ahead of all those guys.
Exactly. And I just think it's exciting coming into a Robert Saleh team who came from San Francisco where they run the ball. And I know in San Francisco, they did use kind of a 3-headed monster, but there was always that clear number one. Yeah. Raheem Mostert, when he was healthy, was the clear number one. And I think that's the same way Michael Carter is going to be treated. Yeah. He's going to come in, he's going to be a clear number. I mean, they kept Perrine and they signed Coleman from San Francisco, but when they went out and got him in the draft. He was a 4th round pick, but still as a running back that you can start year 1 as a 4th round pick. So I think there's a lot to be excited about there. We also know, I think we brought it up on a podcast before, the famous nameless Jets beat writer said that he has a path to be the starting running back. And so we take that and we believe it 100%. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
One thing with Michael Carter too, the only knock I think you could give him is that because Tevin Coleman is there, his receiving value might not be there. He might not be the 3-down workhorse that us three probably really want him to be.
Yep.
But at the same time, I find it really tough to believe that Michael Carter isn't going to be in that top 30 running back somewhere.
100%.
His ADP of 39 is an absolute steal. I'd be all over that on your leagues. I'm not saying you need to run out and reach. And I think we put this in a social media post. I don't think you need to go out and reach in the 8th round to go get him. But at the same time, if he's still there in rounds 9, 10, absolutely, he's a great depth pick this year who has top 25 upside.
Exactly. I just, like you're saying, it's going to be a volume play. I don't think he's going to get great efficiency on that Jets team, but I think the opportunity will be there.
It's going to be David Montgomery of 2019, probably.
Yeah. That's probably a good bet. So now we move on to those great Jets wide receivers who we all love dearly. Lucas, who in that mix of Corey Davis, is it Elijah Moore?
Jamison
Crowder, Denzel Mims is still there.
Yeah. Jeez, I forgot about him.
Who are you taking this year? Would you take multiple of that? Like, obviously not in your same team, but if one of them goes, would there be a second guy you like that?
I'll tell you who I'm not looking at. Denzel Mims. I totally forgot about him. That shows how relevant he is. I think the two that I'm looking at are Corey Davis and Elijah Moore. Corey Davis should be the wide receiver 1 of that offense. He hasn't played a wide receiver 1 role before. He's always been number 2 in Tennessee. And he showed signs of breaking out tail end of last season. I guess kind of throughout the season periodically, but nothing that made me think he's worth being a wide receiver 1 on a football team. I would hate to have him as my wide receiver 4, but I'm definitely not considering him for flex play, let alone a starting position, right? So wide receiver 4 on my team, I'd probably be comfortable with. The other guy I'm looking at is Elijah Moore, and it's purely just based on the hype that I've been hearing out of camp about this guy. So far, it sounds like he's been the real deal, going up and getting balls in the red zone, connecting on deep passes. I mean, he's been the one person who's been shown out at camp so far. And he's going as wide receiver 66 in drafts right now, and I have him at wide receiver 58. So he's probably the literal definition of a late round flyer. Like, super high upside, gonna get the volume because the Jets are gonna be passing the football a lot this year. You can get him within the last 2-3 rounds of your draft. I mean, he might be your home run late round flyer this year. So I'm really big on Elijah Moore. I'm certainly not gonna reach. I'm not prioritizing Corey Davis, but come that you're looking at a wide receiver 5, or if you're not drafting a second quarterback or a second tight end, you're looking at a 6th wide receiver. Absolutely, Elijah Moore should be on the top of your list for late round flyers.
The one thing I do have for Corey Davis is last year in 13 games, he had 65 catches, 984 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Okay,
so he was the wide receiver 2 on that team, to be fair. So that's where it kind of comes in interesting now, because he's gonna take that cornerback 1 every time he's on the field on a team where we don't know what's gonna happen with Zach Wilson, on a team that's I guess you can't be more run heavy than Tennessee last year. So it'll probably be the same type, but the team as a whole in Tennessee was much better than it is on the Jets. So maybe he keeps up that same production, but like you're saying, that's not a guy that you're going to put in at your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, probably even flex spot, just because there is a lot of inconsistencies that come with that. So he was paid good money. I think Tyler told us, so shout out to Tyler. It was a 3-year, $37.5 million contract. So they're looking for him to be that wide receiver 1. They paid him to be that wide receiver 1. So they're going to probably use him like that. It's just he's on the Jets.
Right. And at that point in your drafts too, you're coming to the guys where they're either the 3rd wide receiver on their team or they're the number 1 wide receiver on a bad team. Yeah. And at that point in the draft, I'm going to take the number 1 options because they're more likely to be fed the football versus taking a shot on a guy like Devontae Parker, right? Could be wide receiver 2, but will probably end up being wide receiver 3 for that Dolphins team, which we'll get to later. But, or I guess in the next podcast altogether, not even this one. But at that point, I'm taking my chances on the number 1 guy in an offense versus a number 3 guy in that offense. Sure. So that's the only reason why I think I have Corey Davis higher than a few other guys in that range. Yes. Just for the fact that They want him to be the wide receiver one, and they're probably going to try and feed him the ball like a wide receiver one.
Definitely. Is there any tight end on the Jets that you have your eye on? Is there anyone that is even usable, is even in the top 32 tight ends?
I always have my eye on Chris Herndon, but he's not going to perform well. And I'm not going to make the mistake of drafting him for the third year in a row and hyping him up because I really want Chris Herndon to be a thing. And he hasn't been for me. And I've been so upset every year. Thankfully, he's always been my tight end too. And I've always had someone better ahead of him. But no tight ends on the Jets. If Chris Herndon becomes a thing this year, my computer's going through a wall because he hasn't panned out for me in years past. But no, I don't even prioritize the Jets tight end. If he's not even in the top 15, I wouldn't even prioritize him.
Yeah, Lucas has faithfully held on to Chris Herndon.
I have
for the last 2 years, every single game, and wouldn't trade him. Thought he was going to be the biggest thing. Even after he was suspended 2 years ago, he still held on to him. And it just has not panned out.
This is the year I give up on Chris Herndon.
All right. I would like to know, do you think the Jets finished better than the Lions this year?
Oh. Ooh. Yes.
Yes.
That line seems just miserable.
How about the Jaguars?
No, I think the Jaguars finished better than them, only because the Jaguars have their abundance of talent I like better than the Jets.
All right.
On the offensive end, at least.
All right. Well, those were pretty much the bottom three
feeders
last year. So we kind of know Jets are looking the ceiling of bottom three, floor of bottom one. So that's kind of where they're going to fall. And that might be where most of their fantasy players fall.
Yep. Don't disagree.
Now we're going to move on to the mess in fantasy that is the New England Patriots. We don't know what their quarterback's going to be halfway through the year. Their running backs are always a mess.
Tight ends now, you don't know what to do with.
You don't know if they're tight end. You don't know if they have any playable wide receivers. And Bill will find a way to keep them at least 8-8, so or 8-9. So
I love you, Bill Belichick, but for fantasy purposes, you are literally the worst person alive.
So we'll just swing right on into those quarterbacks.
Fun.
We'll start with Cam Newton. Cam Newton used to be one of my favorite quarterbacks, and it was strictly because his name was Cam. It was 100%. All my usernames, like dating back to when I was on Webkinz, were Super Cam, strictly because of Cam Newton.
I love that you just dropped it.
And I'm not kidding. Like this guy, the whole Superman thing, I would wear Superman shirts to school just because I thought that was the coolest thing. And so for him to throw for 8 passing touchdowns last year, I was so disappointed. But let's start talking
for that many in elementary school when he had his Webkinz account.
I mean, I was hard to beat on that playground. I did like running more, so I was that wide receiver. I'd consider myself a playground tight end, which there wasn't much blocking, so I was more just a pass catching tight end. I was kind of like
sit over in the middle, and when they miss out on deep, you're the one who says, "I was open across the middle."
I was pretty much Mark Andrews. So let's go with Cam Newton here. Lucas, do you think he starts the whole season?
The whole season? No. I bet he starts. I feel like the over-under on how many games Cam plays should be like 10.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to come down to what is the Patriots' record by the end of the season. If they're competing for a playoff spot, then they're going to leave Cam Newton in because Cam Newton is the better quarterback between him and Mac Jones. You can debate me on that. Like if you're listening, you disagree. You can at me on Twitter, Lucas Wensel. Come at me on any of my social media sites. I'm ready to debate you on that.
He'll go off on you like KD.
I will. KD in game 5, game 6, game 7. I don't care. I ain't gonna lose though. Anyways, no, I think Cam Newton plays a majority of the season. I wouldn't be a betting man that he plays the entire season, and it's mostly because, like you said, that Patriots team is just in limbo still. They made a ton of signings on both sides of the ball this offseason, but that's a lot of pieces you got to fit together in 4 or 5 months. So we'll see. And they didn't draft Mac Jones to just sit on the bench and not do anything. Yet at the same time, Cam's only on a 1-year deal, so it wouldn't surprise me if they let Cam play this year out. and then let Mac learn from that and compete next year. But if Cam plays a whole year, I wouldn't be surprised. If he only plays like 8 games, I wouldn't be surprised
for sure. Do you think he passes that 8 touchdown mark this year?
Yeah, I certainly hope he does.
Yes.
I mean, considering the first 3 weeks before he got COVID last season, he was QB7 in
Yes.
fantasy. So I mean, he was on a tear. He was ready to show out. Essentially, once he came back, it was like, all right, Cam, do your thing with little to no help. And you just caught a disease that infects your entire respiratory. Thank you. Your entire respiratory. I'm like, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting the system. Your entire respiratory system, and it's football players are that's a big part of what you do on the football field.
A strictly running quarterback that he was last year.
Yes, right. So I mean, they just expected Cam to do so much, and he did an interview I was reading too, and he said he was in his head a lot and just starting to overthink everything then afterwards. So I mean, with replenished weapons, and now you got Mac Jones sitting behind you too with that motivation, and I mean, he could be a great sleeper candidate. Yeah, I got him at QB 20, but I mean, he has top 10 upside because he can get it done with his legs. And I don't know if you're going to get to this, but he had 12 rushing touchdowns last season, more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's always the rushing upside with Cam, but I'm straying away from your question a little bit. But golly, if he doesn't pass 8 passing touchdowns this season, Cam should just retire.
I agree 100%. I just think like last year, he was 25th in passing attempts out of all quarterbacks, which is just crazy to me that for a guy who started 14 games last year, just 25th, especially in a Bill Belichick offense. But so I think that goes up. He's in, this is the make it or break it year of his career. If he doesn't do it this year, he's out of the NFL.
Right.
But if he shows that he can be a starter, then he can probably find that next team who's like, all right, you prove that you could do it for the Patriots, and I'll come do it for us.
Yeah.
So I still think he's going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns just because he's that quarterback that if you're inside the 5, who do you want rushing the ball? Do you want 245-pound Cam Newton, or do you want to hand it off to one of your running backs?
Sony Michel would be the only other guy, but Cam's still the guy you want.
Exactly.
He's still the Patriots red zone running back you want, and he's a quarterback.
He is. And so it's kind of where we stand on Cam Newton. If Mac Jones does see the field, what do you think that ceiling is for Mac Jones this year?
This is off the top of my head, QB 20. I have it in my notes. If he becomes a starter, I'm not ranking him above QB 25. People have been saying he fits the Belichick mold, whatever the heck that freaking means. Because we've only seen one season of Drew Bledsoe and 95% of Tom Brady's career under Bill Belichick. So what? Some people are saying, "Oh, Mac Jones has got some of the qualities of Tom Brady," but I've never heard anyone say, "Oh yeah, Mac Jones, Tom Brady." Yeah. Nobody's saying that. Yeah. So I don't know what the heck that means that he fits the Belichick mold, but that's a rant for another time. But there's no reason to go out and pick him up right away. There's no reason to go out and draft him unless if you got Chris Herndon sitting on your bench and you just want Mac Jones to take before he, like a Justin Herbert situation last year, right? Where it's like, he won't perform well right away, but if you want to stash him, but that's even if Mac Jones sees the field. They really make it sound like Cam's the guy this year. But we'll see. Again,
he's a guy who could stash in a dynasty league, but for redraft leagues, you're not going to be putting him in the field. So to sum up kind of where we're at in quarterbacks, we got Mac Jones. If you're in a redraft league, just stay away from him unless he proves that he can be like a Justin Herbert. Which would be a pretty big long shot, especially with the depleted weapons that they do have in that wide receivers.
Have to take a punctured lung for Cam Newton.
Exactly. And Cam Newton, he's a probably middle of the pack to low end quarterback 2 right now with lots of upside just because of how he does run the ball and what we have seen in the past from him. We know he can do it.
He's like Kirk Cousins. I said it last week. If you come out of your draft with Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, you're in a great spot. If you come out of your draft with Russell and Cam, that's a great spot to be in too. Because I think Cam has that. Again, he has that top 10 upside. Mm-hmm. Cam and Russell Wilson could be ranked right next to each other come week 6 and 7 if Cam stays healthy. But and Mac Jones doesn't see the field, right? But as of right now, there's too much uncertainty with the Patriots for me to confidently say you can draft Cam in your top 15
for sure. All right, let's move on to these running backs. So in the backfield right now, they just got an absolute mess of
That's fun.
just tons of running backs who are doing all sorts of things. They got Damian Harris, who really separated himself from Sony Michel as that workhorse running back for them.
Yep.
Last year, he had 10 games, 691 yards, but only 2 rushing touchdowns. And a lot of that was due to Cam, like we said before.
Yep.
But he did average 5.04 yards per attempt. And it would average, if he played all 17 games this season, out to 1,173 rushing yards.
Wow.
However, the biggest knock on him is the lack of receiving. We were both very surprised to see this. Damian Harris had 5 catches for 50 yards last year. That's it. It makes Josh Jacobs look like a receiving threat.
It makes him look like Christian McCaffrey. That's what it looks like.
So where do you take Damian Harris knowing that he was a super efficient runner, but just had no receiving points?
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. He wasn't used in the passing game. James White is predominantly their pass catching back. And Rex Burkhead was still a thing last year.
That's true.
For at least a few games. So, they had other guys for those options. I think Damian Harris sees a bit of an uptick in receiving this season, but it's going to be more than 5 receptions,
yes.
Right? But no, I mean, I think Damian Harris could be a really interesting sleeper pick this year. So I have him ranked at running back 32. He's going out as running back 36 right now. So maybe not as much of a sleeper as I'd like, but I'll kind of explain why I really like Damian Harris so much, because I took him in our mock draft 1.0, and I mentioned he was through the weeks he was healthy and the starting running back for that team versus weeks 4 through 13 it was, I believe. He was running back 26, so borderline top 25 running back.
Yeah,
he has a low TD dependency.
He only had 2 last year,
right? And he's still top 25 in those weeks, right? And he's insanely consistent, right? You mentioned 5.5 yards a carry.
Yeah,
he's efficient and consistent. His variance in between his, you didn't see a game where Damian Harris had 25 points, but the next he only have 8. Like, he was a consistent 12, 13 points a game kind of a guy. So that's a guy I really like. I don't like him enough to make him my running back 2, but if I could have him plant my flex every week, if I get that same consistency as last season, that'd be awesome. I'm big on Damian Harris. It's just the fact that I wish we could see more touchdowns. I wish we'd see more usage of the passing game for him, but that's just not how this Patriots offense
not
works. So it's unfortunate, but I mean, I think we'll see Damian Harris crack the top 30 this year. There's bound to be a few injuries and misranks that we have, right, that allow him to be bumped up higher, but right now I have him at 32. See, you can expect to see him inside the top 30. He's just too consistent and efficient. Isn't dependent on touchdowns. It'd be nice to see a few more, but
yeah,
he's a safe pick compared to a lot of guys that are going in his area. For sure. Like AJ Dillon, Marvin Jones, Mike Williams are all going right around him. Give me Damian Harris all day out of those guys.
How about the other running back, James White? Does he have any fantasy value this year?
No, and he just essentially was a lost cause once Cam came back, or once Cam got COVID last season.
Yeah.
Just didn't use him whatsoever. Just became less and less of a thing. Now that they've got Nelson Aguilar in there and they've got the 2 tight ends, I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Cam isn't the guy who's going to check. He knows how to check down to a running back. He did it with Christian McCaffrey for 2 years. So I don't know if it's just going to be different now. I don't know. I'm not prioritizing James White in any draft. I leave him on waivers, and if he has a great week 1, great. Let everyone duke it out for him. But I don't think you have to feel bad about not drafting James White.
For sure. So now we move on to these wide receivers. I'll admit, at first I was pretty excited about Nelson Aguilar getting there, just because I'm thinking, all right, this is a guy who could be a sleeper. But I started looking into his stats, and when I mentioned this to you a little bit earlier, Nelson Aguilar last year had 48 receptions, 900 yards, and 8 touchdowns. But what I saw also is he, over a full season, has never averaged more than 50 yards a game. So this is a guy who's been in the NFL. Bad. He's been in the NFL for 6 years, and has never
6 years. You didn't tell me that part.
And has never averaged over 50 yards a game.
Oh, that's terrible.
And it's offense that only had 8 passing touchdowns all of last year, 25th in passing attempts. I'm not feeling super optimistic about Nelson Aguilar as I was before I looked into those stats. It's just he's a guy who's never maintained it. He's great games every once in a while, but he's just never maintained it. And I lost a lot of excitement looking into who Nelson Aguilar is.
Yeah. And I literally adjusted my rankings today after contemplating where I actually wanted. Because I had Nelson Aguilar all the way down at like wide receiver 61. I bumped him up to 51 for the sake of he was the first free agent wide receiver to be signed.
Yes.
So the Patriots clearly wanted him for something.
Yeah.
So if they sign him that quickly, shows they really want him, they gotta have to want to use him. Again, he's kind of Corey Davis earlier, right? Where it's like he's in that range of, am I going to take a Marvin Jones who's wide receiver 2 or 3 on an offense, or am I going to take Nelson Aguilar who's the clear number 1 wide receiver option in that offense? And I'm going to take Nelson Aguilar, but man, you got those stats there, and I'm all of a sudden my note of wide receiver 50 may be too high.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it might be too high. I might bump him back down to like the late 50s.
Yeah.
Because that's just it's so bad. And I don't want to hear that. But and you think about it too with the other receiving options. I got 2 tight ends there now, and we know how much Patriots love to use 2 tight ends in the past, but I have a whole thing on that. So make sure you ask me about Gronk and Hernandez. I got a whole. That's gonna be like our monologue of the week almost.
We're foreshadowing again.
Yeah, okay, I'll stop. Nelson Aguilar, late round flyer at best.
Yes,
not starting him, not a flex play. Pick him up he's going as wide receiver 60. You can wait on this guy.
Yeah, and I would assume that means you're not touching any other Patriots wide receivers. Yeah.
Gosh, no, they're waiver wire pickups like they have been every other year.
I couldn't agree more. We've mentioned tight ends just now. So Lucas, I'll give you the floor on these 2 tight end signings of Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith.
So before we get to Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I'm going to take everyone back to the time of 2011 and 2012, also known as the Gronk and Hernandez era in New England. So Gronk in 2011 was the top tight end in fantasy football. Aaron Hernandez was tight end 3. All right, we're off to a great start, right? 2 very strong tight ends, top 3 finishers in fantasy. Looks good so far. Last time that happened, it's never happened.
Yeah.
So, let's take a step back, but we're going to continue to look at 2011 then, and I'm going to keep digging this hole deeper of why I don't think we're going to see this awesome, surge of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So, the difference between Gronk and Hernandez in 2011 in fantasy, remember, Gronk was tight end 1, Hernandez was tight end 3. Gronk finished 100 points ahead of Aaron Hernandez. And now from tight end 1 to tight end 3. Jimmy Graham was tight end 2 that year. Aaron Hernandez was still a whole 60 points behind Jimmy Graham.
It's like last year with
Kelsey,
Waller, and everyone else.
Exactly. So I don't know what kind of stock do you want to put in that. I don't want to put much into it, but so anyways, we're going to look into 2012 again. Finishes tight end 1 in fantasy again. Big shock. On a points per game basis, Aaron Hernandez came back down to earth a little bit. He only played 10 games that season, but in 2012, on a points per game basis, Aaron Hernandez was tight end 5. So I'm going to build up a little bit more of that credibility again. But if I'm going to take anything away from 2011 and 2012 and what I learned from the Patriots using those 2 tight end sets and using them insanely effectively, is Gronk is an all-time great tight end. I'm not going to say he's the greatest of all time because we've seen some pretty great tight ends in recent history.
Top 5 though, probably.
Top 5. Absolutely. Neither Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry are Rob Gronkowski.
No, they're the Walmart version.
They're I'd like to think they're more Aaron Hernandez.
Yes.
Talent-wise.
Yes.
And Aaron Hernandez was talented, so that's not even a knock on them. Aaron Hernandez was a top prospect tight end coming out of college in Florida. But it's going to be insanely difficult to repeat.
Yes.
So we see these 2 big, strong tight end signings, and we think Gronk and Hernandez 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Done deal. They're both top 10 tight ends. I don't think so. Cam Newton isn't Tom Brady. Neither of those guys are Gronk.
No.
And it's a new NFL.
Yeah.
This is 10 years we're talking about. This is a 10-year difference. So I don't know if it makes a difference how you rate Jonnu or Hunter Henry. I mean, I think they're both going to be top 20 tight ends. One of them's going to be knocking on the door of top 12, top 10. One of them's going to be knocking on the door of top 15. I have Jonnu Smith rated ahead of Hunter Henry. Excuse me. I have Jonnu Smith at tight end 13. I have Hunter Henry at tight end 17 or 16. Excuse me. Like I said, one's knocking on the door of top 10. One's knocking on the door of top 15. It's personal preference. It's personal preference. And we just don't know enough like we do with every other Patriots player. We just don't know enough.
Exactly.
Right now.
And that kind of brings us in transition wise to our mailbag.
Yes.
We're going to start with our first question from Neil. Neil, I'm sorry, I don't have your Instagram handle on me right now.
I got it. I'm on it.
Oh, Lucas is on it for us.
I'm on it. Just give me a second.
Oh, pulling it up on our last one.
Oh my goodness.
I think it was the last one. I think it was the Hunter Henry one.
It should be, but I can't find it now. Oh, there it is. My comments weren't loading. We're sorry. Something went wrong. Instagram. Oh, here we go. We've got Neil 1254.
Neil 1254 asked, why is your ceiling on Hunter Henry so low, especially with the depleted New England? I'm paraphrasing the depleted New England wide receiver room. So Lucas kind of just answered that. It's because we just haven't seen it. We saw the Gronk and Hernandez one time, and that's it, of tight ends who work together, who were that high, and we don't think that either of them are like Gronk. We think they're two Hernandezes maybe, and we don't know which one is going to be the better one.
It's two less talented guys playing with a less talented quarterback in a new era of the NFL.
Yep.
I really want to put him higher because I think the potential is there, but the odds of that happening are so exceptionally low that, our ceiling, if you go to our Instagram, the FFL is on Instagram. We just posted our Hunter Henry spotlight, and we had a ceiling at tight end 8 and his floor at tight end 23, which I think, again, we were feeling pretty generous about, tight end 8 for his ranking, or for his ceiling. It's just the reality. That offense is, Cam Newton isn't the same gunslinger quarterback. He's more of a running quarterback still. And we just don't, nobody knows who number 1 or number 2 is going to be in that tight end set.
And he's not cracking the top 5. He's not. I don't think he's going to pass. I mean, he's not for sure not passing Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, and then
Hawkinson. I wouldn't say either.
Hawkinson and Mark Andrews probably not.
And Kyle Pitts, I still think
exactly. And then you got Gesicki, you got Goddard, you got Tunyon, you got Irv Smith, you got Evan Ingram, you got Noah Fant, you got a bunch of other tight ends who are right there.
They're more safer bets.
Exactly. So I mean, maybe he pushes that ceiling. It's just not very likely, especially in the offense that he's in.
Exactly.
We're gonna hit you with another tight end question here.
Ooh, I like it.
It's from Mick Lovins, on Instagram. It says, does Zach Ertz have a resurgence on a new team? / is Goddard a top 8 tight end without Ertz?
Did McLovin just message us?
That's what it looks like.
Man, love you, McLovin. Appreciate you. Goddard, I think I have Goddard at tight end 9 right now.
And me and Tyler are at 7.
So yes, I think he could be a top 8 tight end. And I have those tight ends from like 7 to 10. You could talk me into them in any order. Yes. And I'm going to say, yeah, choose whichever one you want. Have fun.
Yeah.
Because they're all going to be somewhat inconsistent. They're all not going to be top 5, but they all have the ability to have their big breakout games every once in a while. Yep. So I think even with Ertz in the mix, I still think Goddard's a top 8 tight end, if not knocking on the door of top 8. Zach Ertz is a talented football player. He wasn't a top 4, top 3 tight end in fantasy for no reason for all those years. A part of it is I think he needs to find the right fit on the right team. I'm not going to say he should follow Carson Wentz to the Indiana Colts, but I'm also going to say he should follow Carson Wentz to the Indiana Colts, a team that needs a tight end. Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox are the 2 guys there. And I'm going to take Zach Ertz's
Yes,
rapport
100%.
with Carson Wentz before I take either of those two. So yeah, I think Zach Ertz could absolutely see a resurgence. We're only 1.5 seasons removed of the dominance of Zach Ertz, really. So I think it's still in the cards, but with or without Zach Ertz, Goddard is still top 8. Ertz becomes more fantasy relevant if he gets traded, but I don't know how likely that is right now. We just haven't heard that much about it.
Yeah, for sure. And then our next one comes from Stewart_Price, and it says Superflex startup draft.
Ooh.
101 pick. So first pick in the first round.
Overall, yeah.
Do you think it's a lock to take Mahomes? Now I need to be honest. I haven't played in the Superflex league before.
Yep.
So my answer might not be that great here, but if you're starting 2 quarterbacks,
right,
are you taking Mahomes with the first overall pick?
No. And it's because I played in a 2 quarterback league last year for the first time. And the first round was still pretty much chalk to a redraft league. Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, all those guys, all those Sherlock number ones at their position. Well, not number ones, but the most valuable guys at their position went off the board first. Yeah. And since it was a redraft, I think there was a little bit more. There wasn't this, it's a dynasty, I need to make sure I have the best quarterbacks over the long haul. It was more so, I can build this up and then I can see what I get for quarterbacks, after I get at least 2 players off the board, right?
Yeah.
It actually came back to me. I had the first overall pick. So I took McCaffrey first, came all the way back around to me. No quarterbacks had gone off the board yet. So with the last pick of round 2, I took Patrick Mahomes then. So I don't think it's a sure lock. You take Patrick Mahomes number 1 in a Superflex league. Did you say it was Dynasty?
Dynasty, yeah.
Oh, and Dynasty. So see, in that case, then you had the Dynasty factor in there. I still think the top 4 running backs are off the board first. I still think you get McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara. I don't know if Derrick Henry goes off the board then, because Derrick Henry is kind of in the last years of his prime. And I guess Dalvin Cook's kind of there too, but Derrick Henry's got a lot of miles on those wheels, and he's got a lot of bruising. So I'd say it's safe to take Mahomes in the first round. I'd consider putting him in like where Devontae Adams is going in leagues now, right? You get those top 6, 7 running backs off the board. If you take Mahomes, then I think that's the safest play.
Yeah, I think the thing though with Mahomes right now is I don't think he's as far separated as we thought he was last year from the rest of the field.
Yeah,
I think Josh Allen's proved that he's closer. I think Kyler Murray's proved that he's closer. These guys are all same age, even younger.
Right.
Dak Prescott's proved, and that offense that and CeeDee Lamb's not leaving.
Right.
For a while.
Yeah,
you got Amari Cooper, and Lamar Jackson proved at the end of last year that he still got it.
Yeah.
And so obviously Lamar Jackson got to be a little more worried about being a mobile quarterback and injuries.
Yeah.
And then so maybe you wait a little bit. I think that would probably come into just the way I think about it. I don't think it would be a bad pick to take Mahomes as the first overall pick because you have him for the next 8 years.
I've seen it done in redrafts.
And so
I don't suggest it, but
I don't think it'd be, especially in a Superflex, I don't think it'd be a bad pick. I just don't think it's a lock.
I agree. It depends how much you really want to value that Superflex spot. Because let's be real, you still have a QB spot.
Yeah.
Most this league doesn't have QBs, but assuming you still have that QB spot, you just have a Superflex where you could play any quarterback, right? I still think you can afford to wait, because then in what case then do you take Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson for your QB and your Superflex? Oh. Man, I'd love to have those 2 guys.
You got 2 guys putting up 23 points a game.
And they're both young.
Yes.
They're both insanely young for a dynasty. So I don't think you need to stretch and take him 1.01. I don't think you need to lock him there. He's probably a sure lock first pick, though.
For sure. Well, that wraps up our mailbags. That wraps up our episode for this week.
First half of the AFC.
First
AFC
half,
East.
We got the Dolphins and Bills coming up next. We'll talk about a little bit of Tua, a little bit of Diggs, a little bit of Josh Allen. Yeah.
That was a few days.
So, yeah. don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok,
YouTube.
all of the above. Subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do. Put on notifications. Make sure that you get everything. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Anywhere you get your podcast from, really.
Yes. So, Lucas, got any closing thoughts?
My closing thought is right now, I saw this today, and I can't believe I didn't mention this when we were talking about Cam Newton. Cam Newton is being drafted after Trace McSorley right now in leagues.
Ooh.
You are absolutely all insane. You need to change it. If Cam Newton's a starter, he's a top 20 quarterback. Get your minds right, people.
All right. And with that, we're going to say deuces, and we will see you on Friday.
Deuces. See y'all.